All right, I will start it off. You are in the car and you are on your way to a big tournament. And this is on a new field, and there are going to be people everywhere. And there's going to be people watching, your parents, your teammates, and you're really excited. And I'm happy today to be able to have Dr. Laurence Young here with us to kind of help you with some ways to prepare for your time on the field, to have the best possible experience, and to be aware of what is best for your health and your performance. So, Dr. Young, could you please quickly share your background? And I have a few questions for you.
Yeah. Thank you for having me today. I am a child, adolescent, and adult psychiatrist in the Twin Cities area of Minnesota. And I work quite a bit with children and adolescents in my private practice. Before this, I worked in a number of different settings, inpatient units, partial hospitalization programs, et cetera. And I also work with adults in my private practice as well. And a small part of my practice is also working with professional athletes in the area. I'm the team psychiatrist for the Minnesota Vikings. I do some work with the Minnesota Twins, the Lynx, the Minnesota United soccer team, the Minnesota Wild hockey team, et cetera. A lot of those, the professional teams in the area, working with the athletes, the coaches, some of their family members as well, trying to work on evaluation and treatment of different mental health issues.
At Althing, we're obviously very interested in the mental health of the athletes, making sure that they're aware of their own mental health, of their teammates, of how to manage their best possible performance. So, the first question I'd like to ask is, as a person begins to think about the tournament they're about to enter, the first game, second game, third game, envisioning their performance and play, are there any hints or techniques that you would recommend an individual start mentally doing to prepare during their drive time, during the pregame time, whether to manage their anxiety and stress or to focus their mind? Let
Yeah.
me know what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I think it's going to be different for every athlete, and it's going to be different for every family. And if you're in that car on that long drive to the tournament, oftentimes, those young players are in the car with their parents who know them very well. And a lot of times I find they have a sort of a toolbox already prepared of, we know what these tournaments look like. We know what these drives look like. We know that X, Y, and Z helps, but we also know that A, B, and C doesn't, and we have to steer clear of that. I think in general, sort of broad brushstrokes a little bit. Um, I think in my experience working with young athletes, I think there's a disservice done when there's an over focus on the tournament coming up. Again, I know this is different for every athlete. There are some athletes who say, it's like studying for a test. The more I study, the less anxious I am when I sit down to actually take the test, that I know I've prepared and I feel good. The trouble is, you have to know when to call it quits. You have to know when enough is enough. You have to know what the difference is between preparing for a tournament and dwelling and being stuck on a more negative aspect. Okay, so a player who says, okay, I'm struggling with this particular weakness on the field, and I've been working on this. I think what I'm going to do when this car stops and we get out and we're at the field, I'm going to warm up this way. I'm going to ask my teammate if he doesn't mind doing this one drill with me. I think that would really help me feel more confident once the whistle blows and the game starts. And so that I think that would really help me to reduce my anxiety. Okay, that's one positive tool that I'm going to use to reduce my anxiety on the field, to feel like I'm playing my best, to warm up in a proactive way that really helps me kind of not worry so much about this difficulty that I've been having. Another player might think about the same weakness in a totally different way and go down a very different road. Uh, I know I can feel it. I played this other team we're playing today. I played him before. There's this kid. He's going to be matched up with me, and I'm just going to not play my best. And I know this problem that I've been having, and I know it's going to come out, and everybody's going to be watching, and there's going to be 6 billion people here, and my parents and my grandparents are here, and it's. I just know it's going to happen. And anyway, they start going down that rabbit hole of the negative self-talk. That's more of a dwelling issue. Well, there is no way on earth that that particular kid who's doing all that dwelling is not going to get out of the car and hit the field and have some anxiety, have some struggles. It's really going to be difficult for that player to play their best and, quite frankly, just to have any fun at all at that tournament because they're just so stuck in their head. So I think that's another tool in the toolbox a lot of times. Knowing when to say when I'm dwelling, I need to distract myself. There's nothing wrong with distracting yourself, thinking about something else. I mean, even playing a video game, listening to the radio, whatever it is, I think some distraction can be very helpful. Their parents and coaches can help with this. At a big tournament, you think about, well, okay, we're done with our games for the day. It's time to go get some dinner. Let's go there as a team. Having kids myself who play sports, I have never seen them have so much fun as they have when they're at a restaurant with their teammates, eating chicken wings or watching the game on TV or whatever it is. They're goofing around, they're having fun, and the parents know that. And the parents, they watch and they let it happen because they know, okay, this is the gold here. This is what we're after. This is what not only gives them the experience they're going to remember, the happy times they're going to remember about playing sports with their friends, but this is going to help them tomorrow. And sure enough, a lot of times after those big team dinners the next day, the kids are loose, they're joking with each other, they're having fun, and they play better. I think the more time you dwell on the anxiety, the worse the anxiety can get, the worse the stress can get. And this gets worse as they get older. Adolescents have this other worry in the back of their minds at all times where the competition heats up. Then this question comes up, am I good enough to play in college? What does that mean? Are there going to be people watching this tournament who might influence whether or not I play this sport in college? I mean, the amount of pressure that one can put on oneself is amazing. It can be overwhelming, and it's really hard to recognize it when it's happening. But to see it, to stop, to pull back, to change course is a superpower when you're dealing with these tournaments and this level of competition.
I remember, and I know that you do too, everybody kind of does that when you're a kid, you're just playing, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And at some point, you gain this self awareness. To me, it always felt like a curve, like just playing. And then suddenly I feel a spotlight. And then people are counting on me. Then my teammates are counting on me. Then my parents are expecting this. And then, there's more and more and more. But one of the problems I noticed is that you can really get in your own mind. And I think I've seen some players who they reach a point where it's get a little bit unhealthy. They get depressed about their performance. It can really change their self image when they do not perform well. How would you recommend as a player to build resiliency? And when you can't, when to look for help?
Yeah, it's a great question. And again, as you get older and become more aware of others watching you and the expectations, that can be a really powerful drain on your ability to play well, your ability to have fun. It can really do some damage. And so it is important to have something that you can do, in those moments to try to make sure it's not affecting you as much. I remember a story, I think it was Adam Thielen, who used to be a wide receiver for the Vikings. There were some times people would notice that he would have a pretty bad play on the field. He'd miss an open ball that he should have caught or whatever it is. And he'd come over to the sidelines and he would just kind of flick his fingers in the air, just kind of two fingers. And people were asking, well, what are you doing? And he said, oh, I'm just flushing that last play. Oh, what do you mean? I'm flushing it down the toilet. And that's what he would physically do it with his fingers to kind of try to remind himself, I think, that you really have to take that last error and do whatever you can to forget about it. Good coaches will always say to their players, what's the most important play? The next play. So it doesn't matter that you messed up. What matters is that you're able to correct, kind of get it out of your mind, because I can almost guarantee you that if it's lingering there and you let it grow and you let it fester and you let it get worse, it will continue to affect your play and things will get worse as the game continues, not better. So you have to have some tools in your toolbox. And a lot of times we really focus on mindfulness, and there's a lot of talk of mindfulness these days. And in a formal respect, mindfulness can refer to certain activities that help you to take your focus off of your destructive, negative thoughts and put your focus onto something very neutral, like your breathing, for example. Meditation does this, yoga does this. These are sort of more, I guess you could say, formal mindfulness methods. A lot of players on the field will turn to some informal mindfulness. And it can be something very simple. Like, I can't stop thinking about that awful place. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go over here and I'm going to talk to my friend on the bench with me. I'm going to go over to the fence and I'm just going to have a chat with my cousin who's watching the game, or I'm just going to sit on the bench and I'm just going to watch this bird fly around in this tree over here. I mean, it can be anything that takes your focus out of your brain, takes the focus off that horrible play that you can't stop thinking about, and it just puts your focus on something else. Some players do something very physical. They might have a separate water pitcher that's full of ice. They're not going to be drinking it, but it's full of ice water, and they go over and they plunge their hand into the ice water. And what does that do? It gets them out of their head and into their body. And suddenly they're thinking about how cold that water is. And for even just a split second, they're not thinking about that last play, and it changes the focus. Anything that you can do as a player when you have a bad play out there to change your focus, to think about something else, and to stop that trajectory of going down that road of thinking about what a horrible play it was and how it means you're a horrible player. Anything you can do to do that is like gold.
And as a member of a team, you might see maybe you and I are in a team and I just made the worst play and you can see I'm embarrassed. You can see that I can't get out of my own head. Is there a way you can help your teammates and ultimately help your team recover from something like that? Is that also a technique you can apply?
I mean, you can see this when you watch, NFL football games on Sundays, right? That a player will come off the field. This just happened with Justin Jefferson, the wide receiver on the Vikings. He missed an open ball. I think he turned too quickly. The ball hit his helmet. It ricocheted out. He came off the field with the most horrible look on his face, like he just did the most awful thing on the planet. And it's really unbelievable how many different guys came up to him. They either patted him on the shoulder or they said a few words. He's a competitive guy. He was pretty angry with himself. But to see people come up and just say like, "Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Let's move on. You're fine. It's just one mistake. You're you're one of the top receivers in the whole entire NFL. Don't let this one play get to you." Whatever it is that they're saying to him, it's just, I mean, teammates who do that for their friends on the team are doing something so invaluable for their friend. They're just trying to divert the focus. They're trying to let that other kid know, hey, you're really mad at yourself right now. But number one, it doesn't really matter. Number two, it's not a reflection of you as a player or a person, that we know it was a mistake and that you didn't want to do that. And number three, you're not letting us down. You're not letting us down. More often than not, when I talk to a player who is not enjoying their sport, it's because they feel that their errors are bringing the team down and they are affecting their friends in a negative way. So for another player to go up to their teammate and say, "No, listen, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. We don't care. You shouldn't care. You didn't just let us down. You just made an error." I mean, if you think about MLB baseball players, you go to the Hall of Fame if you strike out 3 out of 4 times you're up at bat. Sports are meant to involve errors and making mistakes. You can't be perfect all the time, and to expect yourself to be, it's just going to make it harder for you.
There was one thing that a teammate that I had once, he would have a bad game. He couldn't put it together, right? Nothing was connecting, and he was usually pretty good. And he told me that his mother said it was because he didn't make his bed or he didn't clean his closet. He always said there's something in the back of his head that would cause this to fall apart. And you work, you said, with baseball players, and I think sometimes, when they can't throw the ball right or things are not working right, is it because there's something in the back of their head? Is there a mental health concern, or is it just not organized, or is it just not their day? How do you know?
Yeah, and I think you look for patterns there. I mean, everybody has a bad day, and when you have a bad day, it infiltrates all parts of your life. Some of the best athletes out there are people who can take a really bad day and somehow put it behind him and just focus on the joy that they feel playing that sport. That's really hard to do for a lot of people. For most of us, that's really hard to do. So yeah, the other parts of your life and the other stress that you feel off the field are going to influence your play on the field. There's really no way about it. And again, to try to find and put some tools in your toolbox to pull out in those moments when you know you're going down that road and things are going to get worse, to kind of pull those tools out and say, okay, here's what I do, and I'm feeling this feeling again, and I know this feeling, and this is the moment where if I don't pivot, things are going to get worse. What are the tools I use to pivot? I talked to this teammate. I had a snack. I asked the coach what's going on. Whatever the case may be, that's a very important pivotal moment in a game or in a person's day. And to remember that it can go the opposite direction too, where a bad game can influence the next day at school. And a lot of times these things can compound, just one bad thing on another. And that's when somebody's mental health starts to struggle. And a lot of times, the great thing is, I think kids are almost better at recognizing this amongst each other than the adults are at recognizing this among the kids. For example, my younger son had a kid on his travel basketball team. It was an AAU basketball team, um, who really, really got down on himself if he didn't have a good game. And he said, I don't even want to go to the team dinner with you guys. And he would literally just go home and sulk. And his mom would see us at the games the next day and just be like, we're in trouble. He just didn't want to talk to me all night. And of course, he'd have another bad game. So the other kids on the team were great. They'd say, hey, I know you want to go home right now, but you're coming to dinner with us. And they would pull him out of his shell a little bit, and he'd have a great time at dinner. And lo and behold, guess what? He'd play better the next day too.
A lot of players today are driven at school and they're playing sports, and they'll have a 6 a.m. practice before, or they'll have a workout before school. Then after school, they'll crunch all their homework. And, what is the role in the mental well being of an individual who is struggling to get enough sleep, is not getting enough free time to refresh their brain? What's the risk of this, and how do you overcome that?
Well, I mean, I think first and foremost, it's really important to recognize that there is a very serious mind body connection. If one isn't being taken care of, the other will suffer. If your mind and your mental health are not at full capacity, your body's not going to work the way it should out on the field either. So I think just recognizing that there is a mind body connection is the first step, right? And then trying to think of ways to take care of both. So you have to know, are you getting enough sleep? Are you eating well? And maybe even just as important, are you taking care of all those other aspects of your life that make you a human being? Are you socializing with your friends and feeling positive feelings when you're with your friends? Are you studying and feeling confident with your work at school and getting good grades? There has to be a certain balance there. Well, I hate to say it, but the brain is the main organ that's controlling how fast you actually can run down that field, or how coordinated you are when you're skating around on the ice, or what you're seeing and what you're hearing, and it's controlling all kinds of processes. Well, if you don't get enough sleep and you're not cleaning your brain out and it's full of toxins, how in the world can you perform at your best in a physical sense? So that's a great example you use. If someone's burning the candle at both ends and they're not getting enough sleep specifically, forget it. You're not going to be your best athlete, and you really have to focus on things like taking care of your body off the field as well.
Another important one I think that is a challenge. You're 15 years old, your schedule is not your own. You don't
Hmm.
have agency, whether it's your parents, your coach, your teammates, the pressure's coming externally. And maybe when it's time to say it's too much, I need a break. I need a mental health break. I need a physical break. How would you recommend that an individual becomes first aware of it and as a younger athlete know how to broach that topic, whether with the coach or with their parents?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's been a lot more focus these days on mental health days, and we as adults say that all the time. I didn't go to work today. I took a mental health day. Well, what's the purpose of that really? It's to sort of, rejuvenate your mind and your body and just live a day and to not be stuck in some of the stressors and the overscheduling that we all do with ourselves. It is a lot harder for a kid to do that. They don't have that agency. Other people are in charge of what their schedule looks like every day and how they get from point A to point B. As you get older, middle school and high school, you know, really good programs, really good coaches are teaching their players to recognize the signs of stress and to know when they're getting to that point where they might need a break and it might be time to ask for a break. And the really good coaches and the really good programs, they hear that and they accept it and they applaud it in front of the other kids on the team. I think kids are getting better though at younger ages of saying like, "Hey, I'm a little burnt out. I need a minute." So that's important to teach them how to do that and when to do it.
Another one is that life happens. Maybe a loved one dies, or maybe somebody struggles and you feel it. What is the side effect of an athlete shutting things away that they shouldn't? Can you share a little bit of your thoughts on that?
First of all, I think a lot of times it is impossible to totally shut it out. And number one, it's going to be very distracting. How can I think about the play I'm supposed to run right now or the thing I'm supposed to be doing as I play this particular position if my brain is just stuck on this awful thing that just happened to me? I hate to say it, it will affect you and it will affect your play. Life happens, like you said. You can't avoid it. It's going to be part of what happens that day, maybe for a few days, maybe a few weeks, whatever the case may be. I think talking about it helps. I think for uh, coaches, parents, the other kids to not talk about it and say, oh, don't mention to Jimmy that his grandfather died because it's going to get really bad and he won't be able to have fun. I think you have to kind of different the kids on the team, the coaches, the parents have to kind of navigate this carefully. But a lot of times, one teammate going up to a kid and saying, "Hey, Jimmy, I heard your grandfather died, and I'm really sorry to hear that, and we're all really, pulling for you. And if there's anything any of us can do over here, let us know." Right? That kid is going to feel very different on the field that night than the kid who had nobody even mention this life-changing event that just happened to them off the field. So I think talking about it helps, and I think that that's crucial. But also, like we talked about before, knowing when to say when, knowing that it might be time to take a break, knowing that maybe that's tonight is not the game you're going to make it to, and maybe you need to take a break to be with your family after a death in the family or after something horrible happened. And again, for the coaches to set the expectation that there's nothing wrong with that. We're not going to punish you for doing that. We're going to applaud you. We're going to reward you for taking care of yourself that way.
One of the things that they can do well is just learn how to recognize those challenges and deal with those challenges. But when they become too much, to not be afraid to seek help. Share something for those players who find themselves there, knowing that they should have the courage and the ability that there is a way to get to a better outcome.
It sometimes is tough to notice that these changes are happening. Kids and adults do this as well. And it's funny you mentioned things like depression and substance abuse and how prevalent those issues are even with professional athletes a lot of times. The term I hear a lot is that people feel they're self-medicating, and either they're using a substance or they're struggling with other symptoms, and they're doing whatever they can do to try to alleviate that pain. But a lot of times, we have to be good about saying to ourselves, I feel like I'm going down a bad road here. I've worked with players who have abused substances like that, and they're trying to reduce their anxiety or reduce their stress level. They're trying to get back to that feeling they had when they were younger, when they were just on the field having fun. And they weren't thinking about these millions of things that are bouncing around in their brain, causing all this stress. They just want to get out there and have fun. But unless you address it and you address what's really going on behind it, it really does get worse before it gets better. And so for people to be able to say, I'm doing something that might put a band aid on the problem, but it's not fixing the wound. It's not healing the wound. It's just a band aid. I can only put so many band aids on that wound. I think it needs stitches. I need to go in and I need to fix it. And so I think that's really important to be able to do. And again, there have to be resources. There has to be someone who's there who can say, here's what I think you're struggling with, and here's what we do about that. Let's get started.
My understanding is a lot of emergent substance abuse or depression or anxiety issues begin in adolescence, and sometimes, if not recognized and treated in some fashion, they progress into young adulthood and ultimately become those larger problems. Is that a truth?
Yeah, and I think that's for a lot of reasons. One is physiological and biological. That a lot of the substances that are being used out there, I mean, they're changing your brain. They're changing the structure of your brain. They're changing the function of your brain, and they're changing it in a way that your body just needs more of it to feel normal. Because what happens is now you've changed your brain cells. You've changed the receptors on your brain cells for certain chemicals. And when those receptors are empty and they don't have the chemical that they're used to, the wheels fall off and things can get pretty bad. But there's a psychological dependence as well. Wow, when I used X, Y, or Z drug, I went out on the field and I was, footloose and fancy free. I was able to have fun. I didn't have a care in the world. And when I don't have a care in the world, that's when I play my best. So now I know if I'm going to play well, I need that substance. Where is it? Percy Harvin actually recently came out about this. He was a Minnesota Vikings player. I believe he was a wide receiver. And he said, I don't really talk about this, but I rarely went to a game when I wasn't high. And he's not trying to idolize the drug use and say, hey everybody, you should. I was a great football player, and look at me, you should do it too. What he's trying to say is, this is the culture. Even when I'm playing in a league that does random drug testing, this is what I was doing. And it's time to stop and think about why he felt like he needed to do that and how it got to that point. And did he feel at some point like he needed that drug to get on the field and to play his best? And I think if you talk to a lot of players who are abusing substances, they will say that. They'll say at first, I was playing better, I was having more fun. That's why I did it. Before I knew it, it got out of control. I had to do it. If I didn't have it, I was useless. I was absolutely useless on the field. So there is that psychological dependence as well.
At the event that these listeners are going to attend, we're going to be providing a proactive mental health encounter that will use standards for addressing and assessing depression, substance abuse, anxiety, and other challenges, and then provide immediate interventions with individuals like Dr. Young. And this will be provided at the event for free from Althing. And you'll be able to work with professionals who can identify, intervene, and provide help where necessary. And as Dr. Young and others will tell you, early identification leads to more likely positive outcomes. And it's important for everybody to be a part of their own awareness for mental health and be proactive and just looking for what might be a challenge in their lives. So, anyways, it's been a fantastic conversation. There's a lot there. When we talk about these kids coming to the tournament, any other recommendations you have for them other than just have a great time?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that. Have a great time. You know, it's funny. I think when you think about it, a lot of these interventions we're talking about today, a lot of the problems we're talking about today, a lot of things start with somebody realizing that they're just not having fun. They're just not having fun like they used to. The sport isn't as fun. That can be a sign that something is starting to go wrong and it needs to be addressed. This tool that you'd be employing at the field, you know, I think a lot of times the benefit is in just getting people to shine a light on what's happening and to realize something is amiss, something is off, something isn't the way it used to be. I'm not having as much fun. And so if you're out there and you're having fun, that's really the name of the game. If you can't have fun, I would suggest you ask yourself why, because that is when you figure out what's going on, you try to reverse course, and you try to fix it again before things barrel out of control. So yeah, by all means, early intervention, early attention to the problem, and just asking yourself, why am I not having fun today, can be the first question to get you down that road to better health and recovery.
Thanks so much, Dr. Young. I appreciate your time today.
Thank you, and thank you for having me today. I appreciate the opportunity. Appreciate this conversation.
Thank you very much. Is there somewhere, if people want to learn more about your services, that you'd recommend that they go?
Yeah. www.youngpsychiatry.com. That's the name of my practice, Young Psychiatry. If they have questions about anything we talked about today, I'm happy to talk to people. I do free consults talking to people about what's going on and trying to help them figure out what might be next. So reach out at any time, give a call or an email, and we'll figure it out together.
Thanks for everything you do and helping shine a light on these challenges for individuals and make for better adults and better life.
Thanks for what you're doing to bring attention to it. Very necessary, very important out there. Thank you.